I'm curious about your take. On everything that happened last night, what was the single most significant thing?
The single most significant thing probably was Marco Rubio's failure to achieve the breakthrough in Virginia that he'd promised donors and supporters. Let's not overstate this. Because the delegates are awarded on a proportional basis, Marco Rubio won, I think, only one fewer delegate from Virginia than Donald Trump did. But that was a place where he said he was going to win. Virginia also is a state where there's this band on the in the northern part of the state of highly affluent suburbs of Washington, D.C., with a lot of very politically sophisticated people. That is the territory where Marco Rubio is supposed to do best. This is his kind of a state, and if he couldn't win there, things get a little ominous for him.
Donald Trump, watching from this side of the border, cannot seem to say anything too outrageous.
Yes.
John McCain is, a bad guy because he got caught.
Yes.
He's going to build a wall that seems to get higher every day. I mean, it's reaching Tower of Babel proportions. It's, Muslims cannot come into the country. And yet last night we heard something very different. Let's just listen briefly to what he was like in front of the microphone.
I want to congratulate Ted on the winning of Texas. He worked hard on it, and I know how hard he worked, actually. And so I congratulate Ted Cruz on that win. That was an excellent win. Millions of women have been helped by Planned Parenthood. Look, I'm a unifier. I know people are going to find that a little bit hard to believe, but believe me, I am a unifier.
In any other context, we'd be saying he's a moderate. So what happened last night?
Well, what happened last night was he knew that at 9 o'clock the results would come in from Texas and Oklahoma, and that they would probably show Ted Cruz victories. And Texas, probably the most important state on the Republican side, so that's big news for Ted Cruz. So in his characteristic Trumpian way, he wanted to step on that news. But he stepped on it in a different way, as you saw in that clip, at a podium, taking questions. Mm-hmm. Candidates don't usually do press conferences on primary nights. A row of flags and a governor of a state standing mutely behind him, like a running mate or a political wife. All of it was just about send a presidential message. And you're correct that he toned down the point, even to saying something nice about Planned Parenthood, which is as big a boogeyman in the Republican universe as there could be. So he is trying on themes for the general election campaign, no question about that.
He talked about being a unifier. He talked about growing the party. And in fact, in 2008, in Super Tuesday, about 5 million Republicans cast a vote. Last night, over 8 million. Yeah. So he is either the best thing to happen to the Republican Party or the worst. Where do you land on that?
Well, he certainly is growing the party, but he is not a unifier. When you look more closely at the polls of Republicans about him, Donald Trump is not only the most popular figure in the Republican race, he's also the most unpopular. That about a third of the party insists it will never vote for him under any circumstances. That is unheard of, at least in modern politics, for a candidate to be so rejected by so many people inside his party. And the people who reject him most are the most loyal of the Republicans. They're the people most likely to have given money in the past. They're the best educated. They're the most religious, by the way. Because while people have this image of Donald Trump as appealing to the ultra-conservatives, he is massively rejected by people who go to church on a regular basis.
How did the party so misread what its own members wanted?
Well, I wrote a big article for The Atlantic about this in January that tried to make some sense of it. But the Republican Party has been a coalition of working class voters, white working class voters, and the country's business elite. And it has held itself together by largely following the economic policy preferences of the business elite and the cultural preferences of the white working class. In the much more difficult economy we've had since 2008, that formula doesn't work anymore. The economic interests of the richest people in America and of everybody else are moving wider and wider and wider apart. So the formula of tax cuts for the rich, abortion restrictions for our culturally conservative base, that's not working. The party is ripping apart on that fault line. And Donald Trump sensed that, and he exploited it.
So who wears that then within the party, that Trump is now the standard bearer?
Well, it's not all over, and there are a lot of ways that it could still go wrong for him between now and the convention time in Cleveland. The probabilities are that he makes it, but it will be a struggle. And the next 2 weeks, there's going to be a barrage of anti-Trump advertising and hitting him. The thing that the surveys have found has been that it hurts them the most. The highly ideological leadership got off on the wrong foot by saying Trump's not a true conservative. His followers don't care about that. But Trump University, the various scandals and efforts that show that he doesn't really care about the economic well-being of the people who vote for him. Those things have drawn blood. You'll see more and more of those in millions of dollars over the next 2 weeks.
So this negative campaign aimed at Trump, but who really gets nailed by that? Is it him or is it the Republican brand?
Well, if he wins, the Republican brand will suffer because you'll have all of these ads paid for with Republican money saying he's a huckster, he's a scam artist, he's a con man, and the Democrats will surely use that. And it makes it very, very difficult for him to prevail in a general election if it had ever been possible for him to prevail in a general election, which probably it never was.
But let's assume that, the polls do suggest he's going to win the nomination. How does the party move forward? What does it do? Does it say, okay, he's the guy, we're looking 4 years down the road now? Or does it force the party to rebuild? I mean, what really is the impact of him winning the nomination?
Well, it's like a poignant scene in those Civil War movies where some people go north and some people go south and they never see each other again. There are figures in the Republican Party who will endorse him. Chris Christie already has. Newt Gingrich is clearly getting ready to do so. Rudy Giuliani seems to be getting ready to do so. Just today, Alex Castellanos, who's a veteran Republican campaign manager, managed Mitt Romney's campaign in 2008, he endorsed him. At the same time, there are other Republicans who are saying never, never, never. The Republican governor of Massachusetts has said never. Republican senator from Nebraska, never. There will be some effort to put together an independent or third-party campaign that might draw 7-8% of the vote. That will surely help the Democratic nominee. If that effort doesn't go anywhere, a number of Republicans will probably vote for Hillary Clinton over Donald Trump. And then that just ramifies through the party. It has effects down ballot. And what is also true, as Canadians discovered in 1993, once a party splits, it just doesn't come back together again so fast.
Right.
Those splits are enduring because they become very bitter.
To many Canadians, you're someone who lives in the States, has a close presence within the Republican Party, a deep history. How do you explain to people the rise of Trump? Because they have to be looking at you going, what's going on?
Well, it's not so mysterious. What is going on in the United States is something that is going on in almost every developed country. It's puzzling to Canadians because Canada till now has been exempt because Canada had such good economic management during the global recession and suffered less than almost any other developed country between 2008 and 2015. But if you look at Britain, if you look at France, if you look at Italy, if you look at Germany, if you look at the smaller countries of Central Europe, everywhere you see the rise of these anti-system politicians. And it's a reaction to the extraordinarily difficult economic times since 2008, joined to these extraordinary levels of increasing diversity through migration that we have. It's difficult. A homogeneous society can cope with austerity, and in times of prosperity, a society can cope with a lot of diversity. But when you have austerity and diversity together, you get a lot of tensions. And there are anti-system politicians who are created and who take advantage of those tensions, like the National Front in France, like the Five Star Movement in Italy, like UKIP in the United Kingdom. And Trump is just another of those. It's different because it's happening on the gaudy stage of a presidential rather than a parliamentary election. And Canadians shouldn't be smug because the Canadian economy is perceptibly worsening. And the good times, or the comparatively good times that Canada had, so long as oil prices were high, they're coming to an end. And Canada may also be touched by the same tensions that have touched all the other countries in the world like Canada.
Very interesting to get your perspective on this. Thanks for joining me.
Thank you.
David Frum, senior editor of The Atlantic and former speechwriter in the Bush White House.